They called her a mutt, a disgrace to the pack, the girl no alpha would ever want. Then on the night she finally found her mate, the alpha's son rejected her in front of everyone. The pack laughed as she walked away broken. But 3 years later, a mysterious woman returned to the same pack. Stronger and fearless. Surrounded by a storm that obeyed her command. And when the alpha finally recognized her scent, he realized something terrifying. The girl he rejected was never weak. She was the legendary storm wolf. The girl they called a curse. The night Alicia turned 18 was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. For every werewolf, 18 meant one thing. Finding your mate. It meant belonging. It meant finally having someone who would protect you, love you, and never abandon you. But Alicia had learned long ago that happiness was not something meant for her. The Silver Moon Pack never treated her like one of their own. To them she was not a wolf. She was a mistake. A disgrace. A mutt. The insult had followed her since childhood. Some said her father had been a rogue wolf. Others whispered something worse, that her blood carried magic. In a werewolf pack either rumor was dangerous. And so Alicia grew up alone. Children avoided her. Adults ignored her. Some even looked at her with open disgust. She worked harder than anyone else in the pack. Cleaning, cooking, carrying firewood. But nothing she did was ever enough. Her own family treated her no better. Her stepmother called her cursed. Her stepbrothers enjoyed reminding her she didn't belong. But Alicia endured it all for one reason. Hope. Because every werewolf knew that fate could change everything. When a wolf found their mate, everything changed. Even the lowest wolf could become respected. Even the weakest could find love. And tonight might be that night. The pack celebration had already begun. Bonfires burned bright across the clearing. Music filled the air as wolves laughed, danced, and drank. Alicia stood near the edge of the gathering, watching quietly. She wasn't invited to join the dancing. She never was. But she didn't mind. Her heart beat faster with anticipation. Somewhere in this crowd, her mate could be waiting. Someone who would see her. Someone who would finally choose her. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispering softly to her wolf. Please let tonight be different. Suddenly, a powerful scent filled the air. Rich, warm, and magnetic. Her wolf stirred inside her chest. Her breath caught. Her heart began to race. Mate. The word echoed inside her mind. Her wolf was certain. Her mate was here. Alicia's eyes widened as she followed the scent through the crowd. Wolf stepped aside as someone approached the center of the clearing. And then she saw him. Tall, strong, and confident. His dark hair caught the firelight as he laughed with the pack warriors. Everyone respected him. Everyone admired him. Because he was the future leader of Silvermoon. Kale. The Alpha's son. Her mate. Shock froze Alicia in place. Her mate was the most powerful wolf in the entire pack. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Maybe fate had finally shown her mercy. Maybe everything was about to change. Summoning her courage, she slowly walked toward him. Her legs trembled with every step. When Kale turned toward her, his eyes met hers. The moment their gazes locked, something shifted in the air. His wolf recognized her. She saw it in the flicker of surprise across his face. But the expression quickly changed. Surprise turned into disbelief. Then disgust. The entire pack watched as Alicia stopped in front of him. Silence fell across the clearing. Everyone could feel it. The bond. The mate connection. And then Kale spoke. His voice was cold, sharp, and cruel. This is a joke. The words cut through the air like a blade. Alicia felt her chest tighten. My mate cannot be a mutt, Kale continued, his voice growing louder so the entire pack could hear. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some wolves laughed. Others whispered. Kale stepped closer to her, his eyes filled with contempt. I reject you. The words shattered something inside her. Her wolf whimpered painfully. Gasps erupted around the clearing. Mate rejection was rare. But rejecting someone like her? The pack seemed almost amused. Kale's voice rang out again. I, Kale of the Silvermoon Pack, reject Alicia as my mate. Pain exploded through her chest. It felt like her heart was being ripped apart. Her knees buckled as she struggled to stay standing. But the worst pain was not physical. It was the laughter. The whispers. The humiliation. Her stepbrother shouted from the crowd. Even the alpha's son won't take the Mutt. More laughter followed. Tears burned behind Alicia's eyes, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Cale leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You should be grateful I rejected you quickly, he said coldly. You would have embarrassed me as Luna. Those words were the final blow. Something inside Alicia broke completely. Without another word, she turned and walked away. No one tried to stop her. No one defended her. To the Silvermoon Pack she was nothing. Just the Mutt who thought fate would save her. By the time she reached the edge of the forest, the sounds of laughter still echoed behind her. Her wolf whimpered softly inside her chest. The bond between mates was supposed to be sacred. Unbreakable. But Cale had shattered it like it meant nothing. Alicia wiped the tears from her face as she stepped deeper into the dark forest. The night air was cold. The path ahead was unknown. But one thing was clear. She could never stay in Silvermoon again. Behind her the pack celebrated. But far away in the darkness, a storm was beginning to rise. And the girl they called a Mutt was about to disappear. The night she almost died. Alicia walked through the forest until the sounds of the Silvermoon Pack disappeared. The moon hung high above the trees, but its light did nothing to warm her. Her chest still burned from the rejection. Mate bonds were sacred to werewolves. When one was rejected, the pain cut deep into both body and soul. Her wolf whimpered weakly inside her mind. The bond had not been broken cleanly. It felt like a wound left open. Every breath hurt. Branches scratched her skin as she pushed deeper into the forest. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, yet she refused to stop. If she returned to the Packlands, they would only hurt her again. She had no home there anymore. Hours passed. The forest grew darker and colder. Her strength slowly drained away. Hunger twisted painfully in her stomach. She had eaten nothing since morning. The pack celebration had been for warriors and high-ranking wolves. Someone like her was never invited to the feast. Her vision blurred. Still she kept walking. By midnight she could barely feel her feet. The forest around her had changed without her noticing. The trees were taller here. The air carried a strange scent that made her uneasy. This was not ordinary pack territory. This land belonged to no wolf. Old stories warned about this place. It was where witches lived. Most werewolves avoided it. But Alicia had walked too far to turn back. Her body finally gave in. She collapsed beside a fallen tree, her breath shallow. Cold earth pressed against her cheek. Her wolf stirred weakly. Shift. The instinct whispered inside her mind. A wolf's form could survive the cold better. Alicia tried. Her bones trembled as she forced the transformation. A painful crack moved through her spine. Moments later, a small silver-gray wolf lay where the girl had been. Her wolf form was thin and weak. Nothing like the powerful wolves of the Silvermoon Pack. Even as a wolf, she looked fragile. The forest wind carried distant sounds. Owls, rustling leaves. Then another scent reached her. Strange and sharp. It smelled like herbs, smoke, and something older than the forest itself. Her wolf lifted its head slowly. Footsteps approached through the trees. Someone was watching her. Alicia tried to stand, but her legs failed. The footsteps stopped nearby. A woman stepped into the moonlight. She wore a long dark cloak that brushed the forest floor. Silver threads were woven into the fabric. Small charms hung from her belt. Her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. The woman studied the weak wolf lying on the ground. Her gaze was calm but curious. "A lone wolf this deep in which territory?" she said quietly. Her voice carried an unusual power. Alicia's wolf growled weakly. The woman did not look afraid. Instead, she knelt beside the injured wolf. Her hand hovered above Alicia's head. Warm energy flowed through the air. The woman frowned slightly. "This is unusual." Alicia tried to move away, but her body refused to respond. The woman touched her gently. Warmth spread through Alicia's body like sunlight after a long winter. The pain in her chest eased slightly. Her wolf relaxed against the ground. The woman closed her eyes for a moment. Magic stirred in the air. Then her eyes opened again, filled with surprise. "A wolf touched by ancient magic," she murmured. Alicia did not understand the words, but the tone carried weight. The woman stood and looked deeper into the forest. "You should not be here alone." For a moment she seemed to consider something. Then she spoke again. "Come out." Two more figures appeared from the shadows. Both were women dressed in similar dark robes. They approached silently. The first woman pointed toward Alicia. "She is wounded and starving." One of the newcomers crossed her arms. "A werewolf on our land is rarely harmless." The first woman shook her head. "This one carries something different." She looked back at Alicia. "Something old." The second woman studied the weak wolf carefully. After a long moment she nodded. "Then the council should see her." The first woman bent down again and lifted Alicia carefully into her arms. Despite the wolf's size, she carried her with ease. Alicia's wolf tried to resist at first, but the warmth from the woman's magic kept her calm. They began walking deeper into the forest. The trees slowly parted as they moved. Strange glowing symbols appeared carved into the bark. Lanterns made from crystal hung between branches. Soon a hidden clearing appeared ahead. Small houses built from dark wood surrounded a circular stone platform in the center. More women moved through the clearing, their robes shifting in the moonlight. Witches and an entire coven. The moment they entered the clearing, several heads turned. The first woman stepped onto the stone platform. "We found her near the border." The witches gathered closer. Some watched with curiosity. Others looked cautious. The woman gently placed Alicia on the stone surface. Soft light began to glow from symbols carved into the rock. The magic in the air grew stronger. One of the older witches stepped forward. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders like moonlight. Her voice was calm but powerful. "What have you brought into our sanctuary, Seraphine?" The first woman, Seraphine, gestured toward the wolf. "A broken werewolf." The older witch studied Alicia carefully. Then she placed her hand above Alicia's chest. For a moment nothing happened. Then the symbols on the stone platform suddenly flared with bright light. A strong wind swept across the clearing. Several witches gasped. The older woman quickly pulled her hand away. Her eyes widened. "Impossible." Seraphine looked at her with concern. "What is it?" The elder witch spoke slowly. "This wolf carries the blood of the storm." Silence fell across the clearing. Every witch understood the meaning of those words. Storm wolves were legends. Creatures said to command both magic and wolf strength. They had vanished centuries ago. Seraphine looked back at the unconscious wolf on the stone platform. The weak creature lying before them looked nothing like a legend. Yet the magic did not lie. The elder witch spoke again. "If she survives, everything will change." Seraphine folded her arms thoughtfully. "Then we make sure she survives." She looked at the witches around her. "Prepare the healing circle." As the coven began to move, the moon rose higher above the forest. Far away in the Silver Moon Pack territory, celebrations continued. No one thought about the girl they had driven away. No one imagined that deep within the witch forest, the broken wolf they had rejected was now surrounded by powerful magic. The girl they called a Mutt had not died in the forest. She had been found. And her story was only beginning. If you're still here listening to Alicia's journey, you're part of this story now. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Your support helps this channel grow. The power they tried to bury. Morning light filtered through the tall trees of the witch forest. Alicia woke slowly. For a moment she did not remember where she was. The air smelled different here. It carried the scent of herbs, warm wood, and something ancient that hummed quietly beneath the surface of the earth. She opened her eyes. Instead of the cold forest floor, she lay on a soft bed inside a wooden cabin. Sunlight passed through a circular window carved into the wall. Her body felt lighter. The sharp pain from the mate rejection had faded into a dull ache. Someone had healed her. Alicia sat up carefully. The room around her was simple but peaceful. Shelves filled with jars of dried plants lined the walls. Symbols were carved into the wooden beams above the ceiling. Even without training she could feel it in the air. Footsteps approached the door. It opened quietly. The woman who had found her stepped inside. Her dark cloak had been replaced with a simple gray robe. Her long black hair was tied behind her shoulders, and silver bracelets circled her wrists. Her eyes studied Alicia with calm curiosity. "You woke sooner than expected," she said. Alicia remained silent for a moment. Her throat felt dry. "Where am I?" she asked carefully. "You are in the witch forest," the woman replied. The words made Alicia tense. Most wolves feared witches. They were powerful and unpredictable. Yet the woman's voice held no threat. "My name is Seraphine," she continued. "You collapsed near our border last night." Alicia lowered her gaze. "I did not mean to enter your territory." Seraphine studied her carefully. "You were dying. Territory rules matter less in that situation." The honesty in her tone surprised Alicia. She swung her legs off the bed and stood slowly. Her strength had not fully returned, but she could move again. "I should leave," Alicia said quietly. Seraphine did not move. "No." The word was calm but firm. "You will stay." Alicia frowned slightly. "Wolves and witches do not mix." Seraphine's expression remained steady. "You are not a normal wolf." Silence filled the room. Alicia looked up sharply. Seraphine continued. "When we examined you last night, we discovered something unusual in your blood." Alicia's stomach tightened. For years she had heard whispers about her strange bloodline. Her stepmother often said her father had cursed her before disappearing. "I do not know anything about my father," Alicia said. Seraphine nodded slowly. "That may be true. But your blood carries something ancient." Alicia crossed her arms. "I am just a weak wolf." Seraphine shook her head. "You survived a mate rejection and severe injuries without dying. That is not weakness." Alicia had no answer. Seraphine stepped closer. "There is magic inside you." The words sounded impossible. "Wolves do not have magic," Alicia said. "Most wolves do not," Seraphine replied. She extended her hand. A faint glow of silver energy appeared above her palm. "This is witch magic. It flows through study and bloodline." Then she looked directly into Alicia's eyes. "The energy inside you feels different." Alicia felt uneasy. She had always sensed something strange inside herself. Sometimes when she was angry, the air around her seemed to vibrate. But she had never spoken about it. Seraphine motioned toward the door. "Come with me." They stepped outside into the clearing. The witch settlement looked peaceful in the morning light. Several witches walked between small houses carrying baskets and books. No one looked hostile. Most simply observed Alicia with curiosity. Seraphine led her to a circular stone platform at the center of the clearing. The same platform where Alicia had been placed the night before. Symbols covered the stone surface. They glowed faintly. An older woman stood nearby waiting. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, and her eyes carried quiet authority. Seraphine spoke first. "Elder Mira, she is awake." The older woman nodded. Her gaze moved toward Alicia. "You have endured much pain for someone so young." Her voice was gentle but powerful. Alicia lowered her head respectfully. Elder Mira stepped onto the platform. "Stand here." Alicia obeyed. The moment her feet touched the center of the stone circle, the carved symbols brightened. Warm energy spread through her body. Her wolf stirred inside her chest. Elder Mira raised her hands. Soft light surrounded them. The magic in the clearing grew stronger. The witches nearby stepped back quietly. Then something unexpected happened. The air around Alicia began to move. A sudden gust of wind rushed across the platform. Leaves lifted from the ground and circled through the air. Alicia gasped. She had not done anything. Yet the wind responded to her presence. Elder Mira lowered her hands slowly. Her eyes were filled with certainty. "It is true." Seraphine folded her arms. "The storm bloodline." Alicia looked between them. "I do not understand." Elder Mira spoke carefully. "Long ago there existed a rare type of wolf called the storm wolf. They were powerful leaders who carried both wolf strength and magical ability. They disappeared centuries ago." Alicia shook her head. "That cannot be me." Elder Mira gestured toward the swirling wind still moving around the platform. "You did not create this with training. Your power reacted naturally." Alicia stared at the moving air. Her heartbeat quickened. For years the Silver Moon Pack called her weak. A mutt. Mistake. Yet the witches were looking at her with something completely different. Respect. Seraphine stepped forward. "If the werewolf packs discover what you are, they will either try to control you or destroy you." Alicia's chest tightened. The pack had already tried to destroy her once. Elder Myra's voice softened. "You are safe here. For now." She looked toward the forest beyond the clearing. The world outside will eventually notice your power. Alicia remained silent. Her mind was still struggling to accept what she had heard. Storm wolf. Legend. Magic. None of it felt real. Seraphine watched her carefully. You have two choices, she said. You can leave now and return to the world that rejected you. Or you can stay here. Alicia looked around the clearing. For the first time in her life, no one looked at her with hatred. Only curiosity. And patience. What would happen if I stayed, she asked. Seraphine answered without hesitation. We would train you. Elder Mira nodded. You would learn how to control the power inside you. Alicia slowly closed her eyes. Images of the Silver Moon pack filled her memory. The laughter. The rejection. The humiliation. Her eyes opened again. They will never accept me, she said quietly. Seraphine's voice remained calm. Then you no longer need their acceptance. Silence passed between them. Then Alicia took a slow breath. I will stay. The witches exchanged quiet glances. Elder Mira smiled slightly. Good. Seraphine turned toward the forest. Your training begins tomorrow. High above the clearing, dark clouds slowly gathered across the morning sky. A faint rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. The witches looked upward. Elder Mira spoke softly. The storm has awakened. The woman who returned. 3 years passed in the witch forest. The weak girl who had once collapsed at its border no longer existed. Alicia stood on the edge of the training field, her breathing steady as the wind moved around her. The clearing was silent except for the rustling leaves above. Seraphine watched from a distance with her arms folded. Again, she said calmly. Alicia lifted her hand. The air shifted instantly. Wind rushed through the clearing and circled her body like a living force. Leaves spiraled upward into the sky before scattering across the ground. The power faded as she lowered her hand. Seraphine nodded with quiet approval. You control it well now. 3 years earlier, the smallest burst of emotion had caused storms to form around Alicia. Lightning once struck a tree during her first week of training. Now the power answered her calmly. She had learned more than magic during those years. The witches had taught her discipline, strategy, and patience. Her body had grown stronger from daily combat training. Her wolf form had transformed as well. The thin, fragile wolf she once carried inside her had become powerful and sharp. Her fur was darker now, streaked with silver lines that shimmered like lightning beneath moonlight. Seraphine stepped closer. You have mastered the basics, she said. Alicia looked toward the forest horizon. I still have much to learn. Seraphine shook her head slightly. No. You have learned enough. Alicia turned toward her. What do you mean? Seraphine's expression grew thoughtful. Power alone is not what shapes a leader. Experience does. Alicia understood the meaning behind those words. You believe I should leave? Yes. The answer was direct. Elder Mira approached from the path nearby. Her silver hair moved gently with the wind. The world beyond the forest is changing, she said quietly. Your destiny is not hidden here. Alicia remained silent. The witch forest had become her sanctuary. It was the first place where she had been treated with dignity. Leaving it meant facing the world that once rejected her. Seraphine seemed to read her thoughts. You are not the same girl who walked into this forest 3 years ago. That girl no longer exists. Alicia knew she was right. The pain of the past still lived in her memories, but it no longer controlled her. Her voice was calm when she finally spoke. Where should I go? Elder Mira answered carefully. Your power was awakened by the pain you suffered. There is one place where that story must end. Alicia's eyes narrowed slightly. Silver Moon Pack. The name no longer filled her with fear. Only quiet resolve. Seraphine studied her expression. Returning there will not be easy. I know. They may not recognize you. That is not important. Seraphine tilted her head slightly. What do you seek then? Alicia thought for a moment before answering. Closure. The witches exchanged knowing glances. Elder Mira spoke softly. Very well. She stepped closer and placed a small silver pendant into Alicia's hand. The pendant carried the shape of a spiral storm. This will help you control your magic if your emotions rise too quickly. Alicia closed her fingers around it. Thank you. Seraphine walked beside her toward the forest edge. You will always have a place here, she said. But your path continues beyond these trees. They stopped at the border of the witch territory. The same place where Alicia had once collapsed, broken and alone. Now she stood tall and calm. Her dark hair moved with the wind. Confidence replaced the uncertainty she once carried. Seraphine looked at her one last time. Remember what you have learned. Alicia nodded. Control your power. She nodded again. And trust your instincts. Alicia stepped forward. The moment she crossed the border, the air felt different. The world outside the witch forest carried the familiar scent of wolves. Her wolf stirred inside her chest. Not with fear. With awareness. Hours later, the forest slowly opened into familiar territory. Silvermoon Packland. Nothing had changed. The same mountains surrounded the valley. The same river flowed beside the training fields. Yet the atmosphere felt heavier. Alicia walked calmly toward the pack village. Several wolves noticed her immediately. A stranger walking directly into pack territory was unusual. 2 warriors stepped forward to block her path. State your name, one of them demanded. Alicia looked at them calmly. Her presence carried a quiet authority that made them hesitate. I am passing through. The warriors exchanged a quick glance. One of them narrowed his eyes. Outsiders do not enter Silvermoon Land without permission. Alicia remained calm. You may inform your alpha that I have arrived. The warriors looked confused. You know our alpha? Her voice remained steady. Yes. One warrior turned toward the pack village. Wait here. As he disappeared down the path, several other wolves began gathering nearby. They studied the unfamiliar woman with curiosity. None of them recognized her. 3 years had changed everything. Her posture. Her strength. Even her scent had evolved. The warrior finally returned. Alpha Kale will see you. Alicia followed them toward the central clearing. Memories stirred quietly inside her mind. This was the same place where her life had once shattered. The bonfire pit still stood at the center. The same wooden houses surrounded the clearing. The same wolves filled the space. And standing near the center platform was the alpha. Kale. He looked older now and stronger. Authority rested naturally in his posture. The crowd parted as Alicia approached. Kale studied her carefully. You requested to see me. His voice carried calm authority. Alicia met his gaze. For a moment, silence spread across the clearing. Then something unexpected happened. Kale's wolf reacted instantly. Inside his chest, the animal roared with sudden recognition. His body stiffened. His eyes widened. The scent. The bond. The presence. His wolf knew before his mind could understand. Mate. Kale stared at the woman standing before him. The stranger who carried the scent his wolf had searched for every night for 3 years. But the girl he had rejected had been weak and broken. This woman stood before him like a storm waiting to rise. His voice dropped slightly. Who are you? Alicia held his gaze. Calm and unshaken. The entire pack waited for her answer. Finally she spoke. My name is Alicia. The alpha who regrets. Silence fell across the Silvermoon clearing. The name echoed through the crowd. Alicia. Some wolves frowned in confusion. Others began whispering quietly to one another. 3 years had passed since the weak girl had vanished into the forest. Most of the younger wolves barely remembered her. But the older members of the pack did. Shock spread across their faces. Kale remained completely still. His wolf roared inside his chest, restless and desperate. The scent before him was undeniable. Mate. The same bond he had rejected. But the woman standing before him looked nothing like the girl he remembered. Her posture was strong and confident. The wind moved gently around her dark hair as if the air itself responded to her presence. Her eyes were calm and unafraid. Kale stepped forward slowly. You are Alicia? His voice held disbelief. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Kale studied her carefully, searching for any sign that this might be a trick. 3 years ago she had been thin, fragile, and uncertain. This woman stood tall with quiet strength. The bond between them stirred painfully inside his chest. His wolf pushed forward again. Claim her. The instinct was powerful. Kale forced it down. The entire pack was watching. You disappeared, he said. Alicia remained calm. I left. The simple reply carried quiet finality. Murmurs spread through the crowd again. One of the older warriors stepped closer, squinting carefully. I remember her, he said slowly. That girl was weak. She could barely shift into her wolf. Another wolf spoke from the back of the crowd. The alpha rejected her. Several others nodded. The whispers grew louder. Cale ignored them. His attention remained fixed on Alicia. Why have you returned? He asked. Alicia looked around the clearing. Every corner of this place carried memories. The bonfire pit where wolves once celebrated. The platform where Cale had rejected her. The same crowd that had laughed as she walked away. Her voice remained steady. I came to see if anything had changed. Cale frowned slightly. And what do you see? Alicia met his eyes. The same pack. Her answer was not hostile. It was simply honest. The words seemed to unsettle several wolves. Cale took another step forward. The mate bond grew stronger the closer he moved toward her. His wolf growled impatiently. You made a mistake. The truth pressed painfully into his thoughts. For 3 years he had tried to ignore it. After rejecting her, something inside him had never felt complete again. His wolf had become restless and unsettled. No other woman had ever satisfied the instinct that demanded its mate. And now she stood before him again. Stronger and different. The realization twisted heavily in his chest. I made a decision 3 years ago, Cale said slowly. Alicia watched him calmly. Yes. Cale inhaled deeply. His pride had once guided that decision. The alpha's son could not mate with someone the pack considered weak. At least that was what he had believed then. Now the truth stood before him. Power radiated quietly from Alicia. Her presence carried a weight he could not ignore. What happened to you after you left? He asked. I survived. Her answer was brief. Cale studied her face. There was no anger there. No bitterness. Only calm distance. That hurt more than hostility would have. A younger wolf suddenly stepped forward from the crowd. You cannot just walk back into the pack after disappearing for 3 years. Several others nodded in agreement. This is Silver Moon territory. You have no rank here. Alicia looked toward the young wolf. Her expression remained composed. I did not return for rank. The wind shifted slightly around the clearing. Leaves lifted gently from the ground before settling again. The movement was subtle, but several wolves noticed. They exchanged uncertain glances. Cale noticed as well. Something about her presence felt different. He stepped closer again, lowering his voice. My wolf recognizes you. Alicia said nothing. The bond is still there. Yes, she replied quietly. Cale swallowed. His next words came more carefully. Then the rejection was a mistake. The crowd stirred. No alpha openly admitted mistakes so easily. Alicia's expression did not change. That decision belongs to the past. Cale searched her eyes. Do you still feel the bond? Yes. The calm honesty surprised him. And yet you stand here like it means nothing. Alicia tilted her head slightly. The bond exists. That does not mean my heart remained where it was broken. The words struck harder than any insult. Cale felt his chest tighten. 3 years earlier he had dismissed her pain without thought. Now the quiet strength in her voice forced him to face the consequences of that moment. The crowd sensed the tension growing. Several wolves shifted uneasily. Cale looked around the clearing. We will speak privately. Alicia shook her head. There is no need. Cale's voice hardened slightly. As alpha I insist. Alicia remained calm. Then speak here. The wind moved gently across the clearing again. Cale studied her face. The girl he had rejected would have never spoken to him like this. But this woman did not fear him. Finally he nodded. Very well. He took a slow breath. You were my mate. The past tense hung heavily in the air. Several wolves whispered again. You should not have been treated the way you were, Cale continued. The admission surprised even himself. Alicia remained silent. Cale forced himself to continue. I cannot undo what happened. No. But I can offer you a place here again. The crowd stirred loudly now. The alpha inviting the rejected mate back into the pack was unexpected. Cale's voice remained steady. You would be protected. You would have rank. You would stand beside the alpha. Alicia looked at him quietly. 3 years ago those words would have meant everything. Now they felt distant, like echoes from another life. She shook her head gently. I did not come here to reclaim a place beside you. Kale's jaw tightened. Then why return at all? Alicia's gaze moved across the pack. Faces that once mocked her. Voices that once laughed at her pain. Then she looked back at Kale. I came to see if the pack had grown stronger. Her calm voice carried clearly through the clearing. And Alicia held his gaze. I am still deciding. The truth beneath the pack. The clearing remained tense after Alicia's words. Many wolves shifted uneasily. No outsider had ever spoken to the alpha with such calm authority. Yet none of them could ignore the strange power surrounding her. Kale watched her carefully. You came here to judge the strength of my pack? Alicia did not raise her voice. I came to understand the truth. Kale frowned. What truth? Alicia slowly walked across the clearing. Her eyes studied the familiar buildings, the training grounds, the storage houses near the edge of the village. 3 years ago she had known every corner of this place. Now she noticed things she had never questioned before. The pack had grown wealthier. More weapons. More supplies. More guards. But something about the atmosphere felt wrong. You have expanded your territory, she said. Kale nodded. The pack must grow stronger. Alicia stopped near the bonfire pit. And the rogues. Kale's expression hardened slightly. They threaten our borders. So you hunt them? Yes. His answer came quickly. Alicia turned slowly toward him. And what do you do with the ones you capture? Several wolves in the crowd exchanged quick glances. Kale's voice remained firm. They are punished according to pack law. Alicia watched him quietly. Her wolf stirred inside her chest. The scent in the air carried something strange. Fear and guilt. She turned toward the far edge of the clearing where a large wooden building stood near the forest line. Guards stood outside the entrance. That building did not exist when I lived here. One of the warriors spoke quickly. It is a storage house. Alicia looked at him calmly. For what? The warrior hesitated. Kale stepped forward. It stores supplies for the winter. Alicia studied his face carefully. Then she turned toward the building and began walking. Several wolves stepped forward immediately to block her path. You cannot enter there, one guard said. Alicia stopped. The wind around the clearing shifted slightly. Leaves moved across the ground in small circles. Her voice remained calm. I would like to see the supplies. The guards glanced at Kale. Kale remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke. Let her pass. The guards stepped aside reluctantly. Alicia walked toward the building. Kale followed closely behind her. The crowd moved after them, curious and uneasy. The large wooden door creaked as it opened. The smell inside the building was strong. Alicia stepped into the dim interior. The space was larger than it appeared from outside. Torches flickered along the walls. Iron cages lined the far side of the room. Several wolves sat inside them. Thin, wounded and weak. Not warriors. Not criminals. Just rogues. Some of them looked barely older than children. The moment Alicia entered, several of them lifted their heads. Their eyes filled with cautious hope. One of them whispered weakly. Help us. The room fell silent. Kale stared at the cages. His expression changed slowly. What is this? The guards behind him shifted nervously. Alicia spoke quietly. You did not know. Kale's voice sharpened. I asked what this is. A large man stepped forward from the shadows near the far wall. He wore the armor of a senior warrior. His scarred face remained calm. Prisoners, he said. Kale turned toward him. Marcus. Marcus bowed his head slightly. Alpha. Kale's eyes moved back toward the cages. Why are rogues being held here instead of driven from the territory? Marcus answered evenly. They serve a purpose. Alicia's eyes narrowed. What purpose? Marcus glanced briefly at her before returning his attention to Kale. The council approved the program. Kale frowned. What program? Marcus hesitated. Then he gestured toward a large table near the center of the room. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. Dark stains marked the wood. Alicia immediately recognized the markings. Magic. But not the kind the witches practiced. This magic felt corrupted. Dangerous. Her voice became colder. You are using them. Marcus did not deny it. The rogues have weak bloodlines. Their lives strengthen the pack. A murmur of horror spread through the crowd behind them. Cale's voice dropped dangerously low. Explain yourself. Marcus stood straighter. 4 years Silvermoon has struggled to compete with the larger packs. We needed power. So the council formed an alliance. With who? Cale demanded. Marcus pointed toward the symbols on the table. Dark witches. The word echoed through the building. Several wolves gasped. Dark witches were forbidden among werewolves. They practiced blood magic. Magic that required sacrifice. Alicia stepped closer to the table. Her fingers hovered above the carved symbols. These markings drain strength from the victim, she said quietly. They transfer it into another wolf. Cale stared at Marcus. You have been using this magic inside my territory? Marcus met his gaze calmly. Yes. Without my permission? The council believed it necessary. Cale's anger rose quickly now. I am the Alpha. Marcus did not move. You are the Alpha because the council supports you. The tension in the room thickened. Alicia looked toward the cages again. Some of the prisoners trembled with fear. Others simply looked exhausted. One young rogue leaned against the bars, barely conscious. They are dying slowly, Alicia said. Marcus shrugged. The stronger wolves gain their strength. Cale's voice turned deadly. This ends now. Marcus shook his head. You cannot stop it. Why not? Because the council will remove you. The words struck the room like a thunderclap. Several wolves in the crowd stepped backward. Alicia studied Marcus carefully. You planned this long before Cale became Alpha. Marcus smiled faintly. The weak wolves disappear. The strong ones rise. Alicia's eyes darkened. You called me weak once. Marcus studied her. I remember you. The Mutt. The wind inside the building began to move. Torches flickered violently along the walls. Several wolves stepped back in alarm. Marcus frowned. What is happening? Alicia slowly turned toward him. The air around her vibrated. The storm inside her wolf stirred awake. Her voice remained calm. You built your power on the suffering of the weak. Marcus scoffed. That is the natural order. Alicia's eyes glowed faintly. No. The wind roared suddenly through the building. The doors slammed shut. The torches bent sideways under the force of the rising storm. Her voice echoed through the room. That was your mistake. The Alpha who recognized the storm. The wind inside the storage building roared like a living creature. Torches flickered wildly as the storm gathered around Alicia. Marcus stepped back for the first time. His confidence cracked as the power in the air grew heavier. What are you? He demanded. Alicia did not answer. The wind lifted dust and broken leaves from the floor. The iron cages rattled against the walls. Several warriors near the door looked ready to run. Cale stared at Alicia in stunned silence. His wolf pressed forward inside him with growing urgency. The power radiating from her was unlike anything he had ever felt. She had once stood in this same village trembling under the weight of humiliation. Now the air itself obeyed her presence. Marcus tried to regain control of the situation. Guards, he barked. Stop her. 2 warriors stepped forward cautiously. But the moment they moved closer, the wind pushed them backward. They slid across the wooden floor and crashed against the wall. The storm surrounding Alicia had become stronger. She took a slow step toward Marcus. Every movement carried quiet authority. You chained innocent wolves to steal their strength, she said calmly. Marcus clenched his jaw. They were rogues. They were lives, Alicia replied. Marcus's hand moved toward the sword at his belt. You think power makes you righteous? He drew the weapon quickly. Before he could raise it, a sudden blast of wind struck him across the chest. The force lifted him off the ground and slammed him against the far wall. The sword clattered across the floor. The entire building shook as thunder rolled across the sky outside. Several wolves rushed out of the building in panic. Others remained frozen in place. Cale finally stepped forward. Enough. His voice carried the authority of an alpha. The wind hesitated slightly. Alicia turned toward him. The storm still moved around her like a living shield. Cale held her gaze. I did not know about this, he said. His voice was firm. If what Marcus said is true, The council acted without my command. Alicia studied him carefully. Her wolf listened to his tone, searching for deception. But Kale's anger seemed genuine. Behind them, Marcus slowly pushed himself off the wall. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. "You are making a mistake, Alpha," he said. "This power can belong to the pack." Alicia's eyes turned cold. "I do not belong to your pack." Marcus laughed bitterly. 3 years ago you begged for acceptance here." Alicia remained calm. 3 years ago I believed your pack had honor." The storm around her intensified again. The cages rattled violently. Marcus looked toward the frightened prisoners. "You think freeing them will make you a hero?" "No," Alicia replied. "It will make me fair." She lifted her hand slightly. The iron locks on the cages snapped open with sharp metallic cracks. The doors swung wide. The rogues inside stared in disbelief. One by one they slowly stepped out. Kale watched everything in silence. The truth was becoming painfully clear. His pack had been hiding something dark beneath its surface. And the woman he had rejected now stood as the only one strong enough to challenge it. Suddenly a deep horn sounded from outside the village. A long, powerful call that echoed through the valley. Every wolf in the building froze. Kale's head snapped toward the door. "That horn," one warrior whispered. "It is not ours." Another horn answered in the distance. Then another. The sound of approaching wolves spread across the valley. Marcus's expression changed immediately. Too late. Kale turned sharply toward him. "What have you done?" Marcus smiled through the blood on his lips. The council prepared for this. Outside, wolves began shouting warnings. Scouts rushed toward the village center. "Another pack is entering the territory." Warriors approaching from the northern ridge. Kale moved quickly toward the door. Alicia followed. They stepped into the clearing just as dozens of unfamiliar wolves appeared along the surrounding hills. Large, well-trained and disciplined. Their formation was organized and confident. At their center stood a tall figure. The man walked forward slowly. His presence alone silenced the entire valley. He was larger than most wolves. Broad shoulders. Dark hair. His black coat moved slightly in the wind. A long scar crossed one side of his jaw. But the most striking thing about him was his calm authority. Every warrior around him respected it. Kale recognized him instantly. Alpha Darius. A murmur spread through the Silvermoon wolves. Darius was the leader of the Ironfang pack. The strongest pack in the region. His wolves controlled territories far larger than Silvermoon. And they were feared for their discipline in battle. Darius stopped at the edge of the clearing. His sharp eyes moved across the village, studying everything. Then his gaze settled on Alicia. For a brief moment the world seemed to grow quiet. His wolf reacted immediately. Not with aggression. With recognition and respect. Something ancient stirred in the air between them. Darius stepped forward slowly. His warriors remained behind him. He looked directly at Kale. "You have problems inside your pack." Kale's jaw tightened. "This territory belongs to Silvermoon." Darius's expression remained calm. "Your internal conflicts are now affecting the surrounding packs." He glanced briefly toward the open storage building. The freed rogues were slowly emerging. Weak but alive. Darius's eyes sharpened slightly. "Blood magic." The words carried quiet disgust. Kale remained silent. Darius turned his attention back toward Alicia. The wind moved gently around her again. His wolf responded instantly, lowering its presence. Not submitting, but acknowledging something powerful. Darius spoke carefully. "You are not a normal wolf." Alicia held his gaze. "No." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Darius nodded slowly. "The storm has returned." The words spread confusion across the clearing. Kale looked toward Alicia sharply. "What does he mean?" Darius answered before she could. "She carries the blood of the storm wolves." The entire clearing erupted with shocked whispers. Even Kale felt the weight of those words. Storm wolves were legends. Ancient rulers said to command both magic and wolf power. Kale turned slowly toward Alicia. Realization struck him with crushing force. The girl he had rejected, the mate he had humiliated in front of the entire pack, was not weak. She had been something far greater. Darius studied her calmly. "Your power is awakening." Alicia remained silent. Darius's voice softened slightly. You should not face this world alone. Kale's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? Darius looked at him briefly. I am suggesting that your pack is no longer strong enough to protect her. His attention returned to Alicia. My territory welcomes strength. The wind shifted between them. The offer hung quietly in the air. For the first time since returning to Silvermoon, Alicia felt something unexpected. Respect. And it came from the most powerful alpha in the region. The storm reveals the truth. The clearing was filled with tension. Silvermoon wolves stood on one side. Ironfang warriors stood on the hills surrounding the village. At the center of it all stood three figures. Alicia, Kale and Darius. The wind moved softly through the clearing, carrying the scent of rain. Darius watched Alicia with steady attention. You do not belong in a place that hides behind blood magic, he said calmly. Kale's jaw tightened. Silvermoon does not serve dark witches. Darius looked toward the open storage building. The cages behind you disagree. Several Ironfang warriors shifted in quiet anger. They had already seen the freed rogues stepping out of the building. Weak wolves who could barely stand. Evidence was no longer hidden. Kale felt the weight of every eye in the clearing. His voice hardened. This will be investigated. A sharp laugh came from behind him. Marcus stepped forward again. Blood still marked his lip, but his confidence had returned. You still believe you control this pack? Kale turned toward him. I am the alpha. Marcus shook his head. You are the face. Murmurs spread across the crowd. Several Silvermoon wolves looked uneasy. Marcus gestured toward the large council house near the center of the village. Tell him, Marcus called out. The door of the council house opened slowly. 3 older wolves stepped outside. Members of the Silvermoon Council. They had governed the pack for decades. Kale's eyes darkened. You knew about this? One of the elders spoke calmly. The pack needed strength. Another elder nodded. The larger packs have been expanding. The weak must be sacrificed so the strong may survive. A wave of uneasy whispers moved through the Silvermoon wolves. Some had never heard this truth before. Others already suspected it. Alicia watched quietly. Her expression carried no surprise. I wondered when the leaders would reveal themselves, she said. The first elder looked at her carefully. You are the girl who returned. I am the girl you tried to erase. The elder's eyes narrowed. You were weak. Alicia shook her head slowly. You feared weakness. The wind stirred across the clearing. Clouds began gathering above the valley. Marcus pointed toward the freed rogues near the storage building. These wolves would have strengthened Silvermoon. They were dying, Alicia replied. They were serving a purpose, Marcus said coldly. Darius crossed his arms. You are speaking of slaughter as if it were strategy. Marcus smiled faintly. The world respects power. Darius's gaze sharpened. There is a difference between power and cruelty. The first elder stepped forward. We do not answer to Ironfang. Darius shrugged slightly. You answer to your own actions. His gaze shifted toward the sky. Storm clouds rolled slowly over the valley. The air grew heavier. Alicia stepped forward into the center of the clearing. Every wolf's attention moved toward her. Her voice was calm but clear. You built your pack by crushing the weak. She looked toward the rogues who had been freed. They were prisoners. Then she looked at the Silvermoon wolves surrounding the clearing. You told yourselves it was necessary. Her gaze moved toward the council. But strength built on fear never lasts. The wind rose again. Dust lifted from the ground. Several wolves stepped backward as the air began circling around Alicia. Marcus frowned. Stop her. No one moved. The wind grew stronger. Leaves swirled across the clearing. The storm had begun to answer her call. Alicia raised her hand slowly. Lightning flashed across the darkening sky. Gasps spread through the crowd. Darius watched quietly. His wolf remained calm. Recognizing the ancient power before them. Kale stared in disbelief. He had never imagined this level of strength. The girl he rejected had become something far greater. Marcus shouted angrily. You are proving exactly why wolves like you must be controlled. Alicia's eyes turned toward him. They tried to control the storm once before. Thunder rolled across the mountains. They failed. The wind burst outward suddenly. The council members stumbled backward. Marcus struggled to stay standing. The storm circled Alicia like a living shield. Her voice carried across the entire clearing. You believed you were protecting this pack. But you turned it into something rotten. The Silver Moon Wolves looked between their leaders and the freed rogues. Doubt spread quickly now. The truth could no longer hide behind silence. One of the younger warriors stepped forward slowly. Is it true? He asked the council. Did you order this? The elders said nothing. Their silence was answer enough. More wolves began stepping away from the council house. The pack was dividing. Kale watched everything carefully. He finally understood the depth of the corruption inside his own leadership. His voice rose above the growing storm. The council's authority ends today. The clearing fell silent again. The elders stared at him in disbelief. You cannot dismiss us, one of them said sharply. Kale stepped forward. I am the Alpha. The elder's voice hardened. You are the Alpha because we allowed it. The tension in the clearing reached its peak. Marcus stepped forward again. Remove him. Several warriors hesitated. They looked between Kale and the council. Then something unexpected happened. A group of Silver Moon warriors stepped forward beside Kale. They bowed their heads slightly. We stand with the Alpha. Others began moving behind them. Within moments nearly half the pack stood with Kale. The council members watched the shift with growing anger. Marcus clenched his fists. This pack will collapse without our leadership. Alicia's storm continued circling the clearing. Her voice carried quietly through the wind. No. Every wolf turned toward her. You were never the strength of this pack. Her gaze moved across the warriors now standing beside Kale. They were. The storm slowly calmed. The wind softened. But the message remained clear. The truth had finally broken the pack open. And nothing would ever return to the way it had been. Justice, not revenge. The storm above the valley slowly weakened. Dark clouds still covered the sky, but the violent wind that had surrounded Alicia began to calm. The clearing remained silent. Silver Moon wolves stood divided across the village. One side behind Kale. The other near the council house. Fear and uncertainty moved through the pack like a shadow. The elders looked around at the wolves who had stepped away from them. Their authority had ruled Silvermoon for decades. Now it was slipping through their fingers. One of the elders spoke sharply. You fools are destroying your own pack. Kale stepped forward. No. His voice was steady. You destroyed it when you began sacrificing wolves for power. Marcus clenched his jaw. You speak of honor while other packs grow stronger every year. Kale did not look away. Strength built on cruelty is weakness. Marcus laughed bitterly. Tell that to the Ironfang Alpha. Darius remained calm. My pack has survived because we protect our wolves. He glanced toward the freed rogues standing near the edge of the clearing. We do not harvest them. The words carried quiet authority. The council elders shifted uneasily. They had expected fear from the surrounding packs. Not condemnation. Alicia stood quietly in the center of the clearing. The storm had faded, but her presence still held the attention of every wolf. Marcus looked toward her again. This is your doing. Alicia met his gaze. No. You did this long before I returned. Marcus stepped forward angrily. You could have destroyed us with that power. The wind stirred slightly around her again. I could have. Marcus raised his voice. Then why didn't you? Several wolves watched her closely. Some expected revenge. Others feared it. Alicia looked across the pack. Faces that once mocked her. Faces that once ignored her suffering. Then she spoke calmly. Because revenge would only create another broken pack. The words surprised many of the wolves. Marcus scoffed. You are weak. Alicia shook her head gently. No. Her eyes moved toward the freed rogues. Mercy requires more strength than cruelty. The silence deepened. Kale watched her carefully. 3 years ago she had walked away from this place shattered. Now she stood here with the power to destroy the pack that hurt her. And she chose not to. That realization struck him harder than any accusation. The first elder finally stepped forward. If you refuse to punish the pack, then this entire confrontation means nothing. Alicia turned toward him. You misunderstand. Her voice remained steady. There will be justice. The elder's expression hardened. You have no authority here. Kale stepped beside her. She does not need authority. He looked directly at the council. You confessed your crimes in front of the entire pack. Several wolves nodded quietly. The truth had already spread. Kale's voice became stronger. As Alpha, I remove the council from power. Gasps spread through the clearing. The elder's face turned red with anger. You cannot simply erase decades of leadership. Kale did not hesitate. I can. He turned toward the warriors standing beside him. Disarm them. Several warriors stepped forward immediately. Marcus reached for his weapon, but 3 warriors surrounded him before he could move. The council elders were quickly restrained. Some wolves watched with relief. Others looked shocked. The balance of power in Silvermoon had changed within minutes. Marcus struggled against the warriors holding him. You think this will fix anything? Kale looked at him calmly. It will begin the repair. Marcus glared toward Alicia. You still stand among wolves who once treated you like dirt. Alicia did not react. I know. Marcus laughed harshly. And yet you defend them. Her gaze moved slowly across the clearing. I defend what they could become. The wind moved softly across the valley again. The tension in the air began to ease. Darius stepped forward slightly. You have made your point clearly. Alicia looked toward him. Justice was necessary. Darius nodded. And you chose restraint. His eyes carried clear respect. Few wolves with that level of power would have done the same. Kale looked at Alicia again. I owe you more than an apology. Alicia's expression remained calm. You owe the pack honesty. Kale nodded slowly. I will give it. The freed rogues were now being supported by several Silvermoon wolves. Food and water were brought to them. The pack members who had once feared punishment now began helping the prisoners. Change had begun. Marcus watched everything with bitterness. You think the world will reward mercy? Alicia stepped closer to him. The world may not. Her voice softened slightly. But wolves should. Marcus said nothing. For the first time since the confrontation began, his confidence had disappeared. The council elders were taken away to be judged later. The clearing slowly began to empty. Silvermoon wolves moved through the village, uncertain but hopeful. Kale remained standing near Alicia. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Finally he said quietly, I spent 3 years regretting my decision. Alicia did not look at him. That regret belongs to you. Kale nodded. I know. His wolf stirred again. The bond between them still existed. But it felt distant now. Something that once mattered deeply had changed. Kale spoke again. You could stay here. Alicia turned toward him calmly. Silvermoon will rebuild. He hesitated. But it will not be the same without you. Her answer was gentle but firm. Some paths cannot be walked backward. Kale lowered his gaze slightly. He understood what she meant. Darius watched the conversation quietly from nearby. He stepped forward after a moment. The valley will recover, he said to Kale. Kale nodded. I intend to make sure it does. Darius's eyes returned to Alicia. And you? Alicia looked toward the distant forest beyond the village. I am still deciding. Darius's expression softened slightly. The storm rarely stays in one place. A faint smile touched Alicia's lips. For now, the storm is at peace. But everyone in the clearing understood something important. The story of the girl they once called a Mutt had changed forever. And the world beyond Silvermoon had only begun to notice. The girl who became the storm. The morning sun rose slowly over the Silvermoon Valley. The storm clouds that had covered the mountains the night before were gone. Golden light spread across the trees, the river, and the quiet village. Silvermoon Pack looked different. Not in its buildings or its land. But in its spirit. Wolves moved through the clearing with a new sense of purpose. The cages that had once held the rogues were destroyed during the night. The prisoners were now resting in the healer's house while pack members brought them food and clean water. The council house stood empty. Its doors remained closed. A symbol of an old leadership that had finally ended. At the center of the clearing, Kale stood beside the bonfire pit. Several warriors gathered around him, listening as he spoke. The council's rule is finished, Kale said firmly. The pack will be rebuilt with honesty. One of the younger warriors asked carefully, and the rogues? Kale glanced toward the healer's house. They are not enemies. They will be given the choice to stay or leave freely. The wolves around him nodded slowly. Change would take time. But for the first time in years, the pack had begun walking in the right direction. Across the village, Alicia stood near the edge of the forest. She watched quietly as the valley came back to life. The wind moved gently through her dark hair. Her wolf felt calm. For the first time in years, the pain she once carried inside her chest had faded. Footsteps approached behind her. Darius stopped beside her. His presence was quiet but strong. "You brought a storm to this valley," he said. Alicia gave a small smile. The storm was already here. Darius looked across the pack village. "You changed its direction." Alicia remained silent. The wind moved softly across the trees. For a moment they both watched the valley in peace. Then Darius spoke again. "My offer still stands." Alicia looked toward him. "The Iron Fang territory welcomes strength." His voice carried no pressure. Only respect. "You would have a place there." Alicia studied his face carefully. Unlike many alphas, he showed no arrogance. Only quiet confidence. "And what would you expect in return?" she asked. Darius answered honestly. "Nothing you do not choose to give." The answer made her smile slightly. Across the clearing, Kale noticed them standing together. He walked slowly toward the forest edge. When he reached them, he stopped a few steps away. The air between them held a quiet understanding. Kale looked at Alicia. "I wanted to say something before you leave." She waited. Kale took a breath. "When you first returned, I hoped you might forgive everything and stay." His voice remained steady. "But now I understand something." Alicia tilted her head slightly. "What is that?" Kale looked across the valley. "You were never meant to stay small inside this pack." He met her gaze again. "You were meant to become something greater." The honesty in his voice carried no bitterness. Only acceptance. Alicia nodded slowly. "Silvermoon will become stronger without the council's shadow." Kale gave a small smile. "I hope you are right." He stepped back slightly. "The pack owes you more than it can repay." Alicia shook her head. "You owe me nothing." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Nothing? You gave me the push that forced me to leave." Kale exhaled quietly. "I rejected you. And that rejection changed my life." She looked toward the rising sun. "If I had stayed here, I would have remained weak." Her voice softened. "Sometimes pain is the beginning of strength." Kale understood. For the first time in years, the weight of his regret felt lighter. He bowed his head slightly. "Then I wish you peace, Alicia." She nodded. "And I wish your pack wisdom." Kale turned and walked back toward the village. Darius watched him go. "That was not easy for him," he said. "No," Alicia replied. "But it was necessary." The wind lifted gently through the valley again. Darius looked toward the forest path leading away from Silvermoon. "So." He turned back to her. "Where does the storm go now?" Alicia looked toward the mountains in the distance. The world beyond the valley stretched wide and unknown. For the first time in her life, that unknown future did not frighten her. She had survived rejection. She had discovered her power. She had faced the pack that once broke her. And she had walked away with peace. Her voice carried quiet confidence. "Forward." Darius smiled slightly. "That sounds like a good direction." He stepped toward the forest path. After a moment, Alicia followed beside him. The two wolves walked away from the Silvermoon Valley as the morning sun climbed higher into the sky. Behind them, the pack they once knew began rebuilding itself. Ahead of them, a larger world waited. The wind moved softly through the trees. And somewhere deep within that wind, the legend of the storm wolf had already begun to spread. The girl they once called a Mutt was gone. In her place walked something far greater. A wolf who had turned pain into strength. A woman who chose justice instead of revenge. A storm that no longer needed to prove its power. Because everyone who witnessed it would remember one truth. The storm had not come to destroy the world. It had come to change it. And its story had only just begun. And that is how the girl they once called a Mutt walked away as a legend. She could have destroyed the pack that broke her. She had the power. She had the reason. But instead she chose something far more difficult. Justice. Because real strength is not about revenge. It is about rising above the pain that once tried to define you. As Alicia and Alpha Darius disappeared into the forest, the wind carried a new story across the mountains. The story of a wolf who turned rejection into power. And somewhere out there in the werewolf world, other packs had already begun whispering about her. The storm wolf had returned, and her story was only beginning. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe for more emotional werewolf romance stories just like this one. And remember, sometimes the people the world calls weak are the ones destined to become legends.